I haven't spoke much about J.K. Rowling on this channel. I have made a couple videos, but if you guys follow what happens on Twitter often, you'll see someone say something about J.K. Rowling and they're in the UK, and then quickly they will be publishing an apology about how sorry they are for what they said about her because it's blatantly untrue. So, because I'm technically like a public figure, in that I could be pretty easily sued by J.K. Rowling for defamation, I'm not going to talk about like everything she said too much with my opinions on it. And I'd say to people, if you want real unfiltered opinions on this stuff, maybe check out non-British YouTubers. So Jessie Gender has made a lot of videos on J.K. Rowling's in regards to J.K. Rowling's stance on transgender people. And I suggest you go watch them. And J.K. Rowling has also come after Jessie Gender on Twitter itself. But today I just want to talk about the Harry Potter cast and also just like how sad it is to see what she's become and how nice it is to see what the cast of Harry Potter have become, because there's a new interview that came out from The Atlantic, I believe, with Daniel Radcliffe. And it's a really long interview. And it was really interesting, just talking about like growing up on Harry Potter and like where he's at now, struggles with things like alcoholism, but also what this video is about. He also talks about J.K. Rowling and transgender and LGBT rights in general. And this is nothing new with members of the Harry Potter cast. And also she said on Twitter recently she wouldn't forgive any of these people if they came crawling back saying sorry for opposing her views on transgender people. And I don't think I was aware how much the brain rot had really set in with J.K. Rowling, because I don't follow her on Twitter, and I actually deleted Twitter off my phone, so I hardly even use it anymore. But I went on it today, just before this video, and I literally couldn't believe it. Like, every single thing she tweets is about transgender people, pretty much. Or something to do with LGBT people in general, but, you know, mainly promoting the LGB and not the T. And she spent time just saying like really awful shit, in my opinion, about this subject. And there's one thing I want to note. Yeah, personally from reading that, J.K. Rowling is a very like nasty person and very horrible person. I think that's pretty clear. But also I want to talk about self-radicalization on Twitter a bit. I talked about this with Elon Musk like years ago, before I think he bought Twitter, and Jordan Peterson as well. And I'm not saying these three people didn't have bad politics before, because they did. But I think there's something about Twitter which is self-radicalizing, in that these people create these echo chambers for themselves and get so much dopamine hits off like their community. They just become increasingly radicalized and they just cannot see anything outside their bubble. And I just want to read this one J.K. Rowling tweet, which is amazing that she tweeted this because it pretty much just sums her up. She tweeted last month, "Long experience has taught me that people who believe themselves possessed of almost saint-like righteousness are capable of blocking out almost any evidence that contradicts their worldview." Just absolutely amazing someone like her would tweet that, because obviously that is basically her. And yeah, like I said, someone who self-radicalized themselves on Twitter and just spends seemingly all day on Twitter, which blows my mind even more. Like, imagine you're a super successful author, created one of the biggest media properties of all time, and had so many fans as well, really respected by everyone, work on Hollywood movies set in the same universe as the books you've written because she wrote the screenplay for those terrible Fantastic Beasts movies. And then what do you do with all that wealth, that fame, that adoration? You spend all your time on Twitter going after one of the most marginalized groups in society. It's honestly very, very sad. And in a weird way, while Daniel Radcliffe has kind of brushed off Harry Potter, like it'll always be a part of him, but he's, you know, clearly moved on, J.K. Rowling has clearly moved on as well. And honestly, she won't be remembered for her talent. And as time goes on, the opinion of her will shift even more, because this is what she's going to be remembered for. And obviously, a lot of famous authors have really bad politics or weird worldviews, like Philip K. Dick, Frank Herbert, people who made like beloved things like, you know, multiple sci-fi properties or things like Dune. But at the same time, they didn't have Twitter, and at the same time, they didn't spend all their later career just fixated on this one thing they wouldn't shut up about. And she also is exhibiting something I see a lot. When you have a fan base turn on you, it sends you like further down this path. And it feels like these people just want to like recover that fan base so they find it elsewhere. So Elon Musk used to be hated by conservatives for the electric car stuff. And as more like left-wing people, liberal people turned on him, he's just gone right down there to seek all this validation from ultra-right conservatives. It seems like J.K. Rowling's doing this more with like, you know, these are gender-critical feminists. Now, as we talk about the more recent stories, I just want to remind people, so just an article in Entertainment, every Harry Potter actor who's spoken out against J.K. Rowling's controversial trans comments. So recently, Rowling posted a lengthy essay on her personal website, doubling down on a stance that many have called anti-trans. And this is in 2020. Daniel Radcliffe was one of the first to address the issue with a lengthy statement released via the Trevor Project. Transgender women are women. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and dignity of transgender people and goes against all advice given by professional healthcare associations who have far more expertise on this subject matter than either Joe or I, he wrote, before speaking directly to fans of the series, saying, if you found anything in these stories that resonated with you and helped you at any time in your life, then that is between you and the book that you read, and it is sacred. Soon, many others followed suit. On Tuesday, actress Ivana Lynch, who played Luna Lovegood in multiple films, shared a statement on Twitter saying, feeling like you don't fit in or aren't accepted for who you are the worst, most lonely feelings a human can experience, and I won't be helping to marginalise trans women and men further. I applaud the immense bravery they show in embracing themselves and think we should all listen to their stories. On Wednesday, Eddie Redmayne, who stars in Fantastic Beasts, also released his own statement saying respect for transgender people remains a cultural imperative, and over the years I've been trying to constantly educate myself. This is an ongoing process. As someone who has worked with both J.K. Rowling and members of the trans community, I wanted to make it absolutely clear where I stand. I disagree with Joe's comments. Trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary identities are valid. Emma Watson, another member of the cast, also turned to Twitter to express her support, saying trans people are who they say they are and deserve to live their lives without being constantly questioned or told that they aren't who they say they are. Watson also saying, I want my trans followers to know that I and so many people around the world see you, respect you, and love you for who you are. Bonnie Wright also said on Twitter, if Harry Potter was a source of love and belonging for you, that love is infinite and there to take without judgment or question. Trans women are women. I see you and love you. Bonnie. And then later, Rupert Grint also responded, I firmly stand with the trans community and echo the sentiments expressed by many of my peers. Trans women are women, trans men are men. We should all be entitled to live with love and without judgment. So I honestly think this was part of the spiral down this rabbit hole where this campaign and crusade against specifically trans women seems to have just taken over J.K. Rowling's entire personality. And as Daniel Radcliffe is going to allude to later, he says the press couldn't wait to write articles about how ungrateful all the cast were because they're coming out against J.K. Rowling. And that's the statements he's recently made, saying, I don't owe her like my entire beliefs just because she wrote books and obviously helped choose him as Harry Potter in the first place. It's obviously like super embarrassing because she wasn't talking to any of them, but they all come out because they know they're in this community as well. A lot of them know that like so many people who have helped make their career, so many fan bases that have like elevated them, they are often more progressive communities. And pretty clear with Harry Potter, despite my problems with often like the politics of it, but at the same time, even if I disagree with the politics sometimes exhibited by fans of Harry Potter, it's pretty clear on social things, they're at least very progressive. So most of them don't agree with J.K. Rowling at all. And that's why I think there's like, isn't there like a made up like fan fiction community called like the Marauders, which is about like Harry Potter's dad and friends, and it's more like LGBT focused and stuff. That's why these things even exist in the first place. So Daniel Radcliffe has already stood by his comments back in late 2022. So he spoke about why he put out this statement. The reason I felt very, very much as though I needed to say something when I did was because, particularly since finishing Harry Potter, I've met so many queer and trans kids and young people who had a huge amount of identification with Potter on that. And so seeing them hurt on that day, I was like, I wanted them to know that not everyone in the franchise felt that way, and that was really important. I've worked with the Trevor Project for more than 10 years, and I don't think I would have been able to look myself in the mirror had I not said anything, but it's not mine to guess what's going on in someone's head. So before this new article came out with Daniel Radcliffe's quotes, someone saying, just waiting for Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson to give you a very public apology, safe in the knowledge that you will forgive them. J.K. Rowling saying, not safe, I'm afraid. Celebs who cozied up to a movement intent on eroding women's hard-won rights and who use their platform to cheer on the transitioning of minors can save their apologies for traumatized detransitioners and vulnerable women relying on single-sex spaces. Her mind is just so fried at this point. Like, am I reading Matt Walsh? Because that's what it sounds like. But anyway, it's clear she's very scorned by the cast of Harry Potter, and she won't forgive them. But I don't think they're ever going to come back for forgiveness, and I don't think these people are ever going to change their mind and suddenly become gender-critical feminists and spend all their time attacking trans people on Twitter, because most of them seem like pretty decent people, and they also seem to have something better in their life to do as well, like, you know, having successful careers and still being relevant and not being self-radicalized on something like Twitter. So like I was talking about, The Atlantic ran an article about this as well, and it's well worth reading. It just talks about Chris Columbus and J.K. Rowling picking him out as Harry Potter originally. And Christopher Columbus actually said they auditioned like 1,000 different young kids for Harry Potter. And I just want to make that clear because, as Daniel Radcliffe is going to say, that the UK press have been wanting to say he's just ungrateful for the success of being chosen by J.K. Rowling. And here's another point I just want to elaborate on quick as well. J.K. Rowling's work is not good, and I don't think the Harry Potter books are actually good when you understand her politics a bit better in terms of what she's trying to represent as good and bad, especially as an adult. I mean, as children's books, when you don't know any better, they're fine. But I also think the books were elevated by these good films, and I don't think all of them are good, but I think it's impressive to have a series that covers like every year of these children's like schooling until they're like young adults and like shift the tone slowly so it becomes more mature with their progression into adulthood. And I think a lot of those movies still hold up like pretty nicely because of, you know, for good directors, the fact that J.K. Rowling didn't write the movies, and also because they realised that the audience were maturing with the movies, so yeah, they did change the tone to something more darker. And I think those movies, considering there's so many of them, it is like quite an achievement in terms of like film, especially adapting a novel and stuff, to make so many movies that are either like, you know, passable or actually like good films. I remember when I was a kid, because I grew up with Harry Potter, I think I was like 5 or 6 years old when the first one came out. I went to the cinema for every single one. The last one came out when I was like 15, and it was just like that cultural moment for a lot of us, and I was like the perfect age to like Harry Potter. I was also like a big fan of Lord of the Rings. It came out when I was, you know, at a similar age with Harry Potter, things like The Hobbit and stuff like that even later on. So I was the perfect target audience for this Harry Potter. But it's just like when you grow up a bit, and this is why I don't understand why so many older people than me still like Harry Potter. When you grow up a bit, you kind of start thinking about this world a bit more, even from the film's point of view, and thinking, oh, like, yeah, it is kind of weird, isn't it? Like the politics of these movies. And then you start realising J.K. Rowling's own opinions. I know, like, a lot of you aren't British, but when she started all this anti-Corbyn stuff, and then you start thinking, oh yeah, I really don't like the themes of this movie. I think with Harry Potter, you just cannot escape J.K. Rowling's politics, and it doesn't matter how much you change the movie, they're just always there, because it's the fabric of the world. But I would end that by saying the success of the Harry Potter films is not because of J.K. Rowling. And I would say some of the success is actually in spite of J.K. Rowling. So talking about this, so Daniel Radcliffe has long been a public advocate for the Trevor Project. He was first introduced to it back in 2009. He explains that having grown up in his parents' world surrounded by their gay friends, it was baffling to discover the wider world's prejudice. Here he saw a specific opportunity to help. If there was any value in a famous straight young actor who was from this film series that could be useful in the film, I was just very keen to be a part of that. He says, along the way, he became aware of a particular symbiosis that he hadn't anticipated. I did have a realization of the connection to Harry Potter and this stuff, and a lot of people found some solace in the books and films who were dealing with feeling closeted or rejected by their family or living with a secret. Then in June 2020, J.K. Rowling wrote a series of tweets that set off a media hullabaloo. A few days later, Radcliffe issued a personal statement, and I already read that for you earlier. And then he goes on to say in this interview, I'd worked with the Trevor Project for 12 years, and it would have seemed like, I don't know, immense cowardice for me not to say something. I wanted to try and help the people that have been negatively affected by the comments, and to say that if those are Joe's views, then they are not the views of everybody associated with the Potter franchise. Radcliffe says he has no direct contact with Rowling throughout any of this. It makes me really sad, ultimately, he says, because I do look at that person I met, the times that we met, and the books that she wrote, and the world that she created, and all of that to me is so deeply empathetic. During the blowback, he was often thrown together with his Harry Potter co-stars, who both expressed their support for the trans community too. In the British press particularly, he says, there's a version of, are these three kids ungrateful brats, that people have always wanted to write, and they were finally able to. So good for them, I guess. Never mind that he found the premise simply wrong-headed. Joe, obviously Harry Potter would not have happened without her, so nothing in my life would have probably happened that way. It is, without that person, but that doesn't mean that you owe the things you truly believe to someone else for your entire life. And I have no doubt, deep down, J.K. Rowling probably feels like all of the cast, but especially Daniel Radcliffe, should be grateful to her for both writing Harry Potter and for picking him as Harry Potter. But of course, that completely omits that all the talented people who made the film, Daniel Radcliffe's own talent, which actually made Harry Potter successful, because how many novels have been adapted that haven't been successful, right? And even if they've had good lead characters, they just didn't have the right team behind them. Think of the mess that was David Lynch's original Dune film in 1984, right? Harry Potter could have been like that. And the success of novel adaptations rests just as much with the filmmakers as it does with the people who make the source material, in my opinion. Like, yes, things like The Lord of the Rings are based on decent source material, but stuff like that isn't winning the most Oscars ever, basically, unless you have like the most talented people doing this and adapting it in a way that makes sense for a film. I honestly think J.K. Rowling has been made way more relevant by the cast and crew of the Harry Potter films, thanks to them making successful films out of her books that I don't think are actually anything special. But yeah, I'm not surprised J.K. Rowling has been spiraling, but I am surprised at the extent in that she will literally talk about nothing else, and expect her, by the time you watch this video, to have probably responded to what Daniel Radcliffe said, because yeah, pretty clear she feels entitled to his success, and is not happy that he won't bend the knee, essentially. But anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.